Tam Parijana Saritam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanditam Madhika Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Man Nistarka Madhagya Madananda Namostute Hariam Tat Sat. Srimad Bhagavatam, beginning of the 7th canto. Parikshit Maharaj hearing about Krishna's assisting the Devatas against the Asuras inquires how it's possible for the Lord to be partial. The Lord is Samapriya Suhrit. He has equal vision, as a super soul of everyone. Everyone is dear. And also he is a friend of all beings, and yet he seems to be partial towards some against others. So this is a great doubt in his mind. Of course, it is not in his mind, but he's asking on behalf of the rest of the world. And he wants to hear the Siddhanta from the mouth of Shukadeva Goswami. So he's posed this question. And now Parikshit Maharaj wants to give answer. Shukadeva Goswami will now give the answer. So this section is very subtle. Let's hear what Shukadeva Goswami has to say. This is verses 4 and 5. Shri Rishar Uvacha. Sadhu Krishna Maharaja Harisharitam Adbhutam Yad Bhagavata Mahatmyam Bhagavad Bhaktivardhanam Giyate Paramam Punyam Rishabhe Nanatadivi Natva Krishnaya Munaye Atiyishe Hare Katam. The Srila Prabhupada's translation. The great sage Shukadeva Goswami said, "My dear king, you have put before me an excellent question. Discourses concerning the activities of the Lord, in which the glories of his devotees are also found, are extremely pleasing to devotees. Such wonderful topics always counteract the miseries of the materialistic way of life. Therefore, great sages like Narada always speak upon Srimad Bhagavatam because it gives one the facility to hear and chant about the wonderful activities of the Lord. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto Srila Vyasadeva, and then begin describing topics concerning the activities of Lord Hari." So Shukadeva Goswami begins his reply, "Sadhu Prishta Maharaja." O Maharaj Parikshit, your question is sadhu. Sadhu means excellent. This is an excellent question because it was asked with deep deliberation upon the tattva. We deeply deliberate upon the ontological position of Bhagavan. And you've heard something that appears to contradict that ontological position. So you've caught that. And therefore, this is an excellent question because it was asked after considerable deliberation, deep rumination upon the subject matter. Still, Harish Charitam Adbhutam, the exploits or acts of Hari are Adbhutam. So the word Adbhutam means wonderful. And here it is given the sense that the activities of the Lord have no antecedent. In other words, they're not able to be deliberated upon because there's nothing like them. Just like when the materialists, for example, they try to deliberate upon the cause of existence itself. So who can deliberate upon such a thing? The cause of existence existed, if it did exist, before we came into being as we are now. So how are we able to deliberate upon something that existed before we existed as we are now? It is not possible. You can only understand it by positive revelation. There would be no other way to understand that which existed before we existed as we stand now. It is like, for example, we all believe that there is a Mahatma Gandhi. But how do you know? There is no way to deliberate upon Mahatma Gandhi from where you stand now in 2022. Only way you know that he existed is because it was told to you, it was revealed. So if something exists before we exist, then there's no way to deliberate upon it except for by it being revealed to us or told. And at that point, you can accept or reject. But there's no other way to understand that reality. So what is the cause of existence? They offer so many theories. Big Bang theory may be there. Okay, from where the Big Bang has come. They say there's some small particles and they become more dense or something and cause explosions. Where do particles come from? You can keep asking this question. From where this existence has come? Then if they say, well, before that there was nothing. So you mean to say something can come out of nothing? So how does that work? And this way, by deliberation alone, you would not be able to come to any conclusion. Therefore, there will be so many theories, and all the bodies, they will be fighting with each other. According to this theory, that theory, there will be samvada vibhata, agreement and disagreement, and that way there will be no conclusion, actually. So no one can deliberate upon such things, like the cause of existence. No one can give answer to that question just by sheer intellect alone. You can only come up with some theories, and then you can fight with other theorists, and that way no conclusion will be reached. So Bhagavan's activities exist before the manifestation of the material world. They exist in his own domain, the spiritual world. That means that there is nothing like them. The forms of Bhagavan, they're composed of elements that are nothing like the elements of material nature. And therefore the acts of Bhagavan and the spiritual world are nothing like the acts in the material world. So there's no way you can actually deliberate upon them. That's the point. Even intelligence is not able to deliberate upon its the soul, because buddhi or intelligence is a part of prakriti or nature, and the soul itself exists beyond nature. So how can the intelligence deliberate on something that is beyond its own existence? It cannot reach that far. You can use the intelligence to come to the conclusion that there might be something beyond matter. But that is as far as intellect can take you. It cannot tell you positively what that something is. It is not possible to be deliberated upon. So Sadhu Prishtam Maharaja, O Maharaj Parikshit, your question is excellent because it was considered with due deliberation. But Harish Taritamal Bhutam, because the exploits of Hari are beyond nature, they have no antecedent. There's nothing like them. Therefore, they cannot be deliberated upon. They can only be positively revealed by Bhagavan himself, and it's usually in the form of sacred texts. Otherwise, there's no way to understand it positively, except from the process of revelation. This is the meaning of Harish Charitam Adbhutam. Yat Bhagavata Mahatmyam, in those acts of Hari, Yad, and those exploits of Hari, Bhagavata Mahatmyam, the glories of devotees are also told. Bhagavata Mahatmya means the glories of the Bhagavatas. Those are the devotees of God. And those exploits, the glories of the Bhaktas are also told, like Prahlad Maharaj, because in this canto, we're going to hear the glories for 10 chapters of Prahlad Maharaj. So in the exploits of Hari, the glories of the Lord's devotees are told. Bhagavad Bhakti Vardhana. And these glories, Vardhana means to like expand or increase, nourish. They nourish bhakti for Bhagavan. So the idea of this phrase, what is being implied here, says our commentators, that if these acts of the Lord and his devotees expand bhakti, Bhagavad Bhakti Vardhana, that means there cannot be anything material in them. If there is something material in them, then they cannot expand bhakti. Because bhakti is a spiritual energy, it's a spiritual substance. And bhakti is nourished by its own self. Bhakti is nourished by bhakti only. They cannot be nourished by anything material. So if there's something material in the acts of Bhagavan, then that cannot nourish bhakti. But here it is saying that in these acts, the glories of the bhaktas are told, and they expand bhakti, a spiritual energy. So if that is the case, there can be nothing material in them. Like God being partial, or God being partial to this one opposed to that other. Partiality is, again, due to the influence of nature. I like this one, I don't like this one. This is due to raga, dvesha, that is situated, and that is situated in Prakriti. Just like the verse Krishna says in Gita, Mana Shasha Indriyani Prakriti Stani Kashita. The jivas in this material world, they are drawn towards matter due to the mind and six senses which are rooted in Prakriti. We basically find matter irresistible because we identify with our body and mind, which is part of Prakriti, and they're moving toward Prakriti only, or nature. So in this way, we are irresistibly drawn towards matter. But in Bhagavan, there's nothing like that. So if these stories of Bhagavan, which appear to give expression to mundane partiality, they appear that way, but they nourish bhakti. So then that appearance is, as Prabhupada will say in the next purport, it is an imposition of our material vision onto the transcendent reality. And then that vision is rejected by us. But what we're not rejecting is God. We're rejecting our aropita. Aropita means our superimposition of our conception onto God. Just like if you ask people who is God, that's an interesting question to ask people, especially those who don't believe in God. We say, well, what do you mean when you say God? That is never usually discussed in these God debates. They always discuss does God exist, but they don't discuss what do you mean when you say God? First of all, we got to get that clear. Otherwise, we're talking about two different things. So many times people have concept of God as sky daddy, some guy in the sky, that you bring your desires to and he gives it to you, sky daddy. They have concept like this basically. And they said that cannot be God, and they are correct. So all they've rejected was their own conception or misconception of God. They have not rejected God itself because that they did not know. And it is simply their own conceptual imposition upon that reality that is being rejected. So if these acts of Bhagavan nourish bhakti, because bhakti has already been established at this point in the Bhagavatam as a spiritual energy, therefore there's nothing in them that is mundane. That is the point. There's no matter in that. So they must be transcendental, and therefore being transcendental, they cannot really be deliberated upon. They can only be revealed by the Supreme Lord himself, or sacred texts. The devotees who speak sacred texts, only then it can be. Otherwise, you cannot deliberate upon it. There's nothing, you will not come to any positive conclusion about it. Giyate paramam punyam rishibir naradhadibi. So these acts of Hari, they are parama punyam. Paramam punyam means they are supremely pious. Or the meaning is they're supremely pious because they expand bhakti, being part of the spiritual energy. That is one meaning. Or they attain supreme piety because they are sung by great devotees. Giyate rishibhe naradadibi. Because great souls are singing these topics of Hari, they bestow upon those who hear them paramam punyam, supreme auspiciousness. You understand? That is the other meaning. The Lord's activities are themselves very powerful, but they become all the more so when vibrated by great devotees. When vibrated by great devotees, they can infuse the consciousness of the jiva with powerful bhakti. Nice verse from Brahma Stuti. Gyane prayasam udapasha namanta eva jivanti samukaritam bhavadeya vrata. Stane sita shutikatan tanuval manopi. E prayaso ajita jito paisitais trilokyam. Gyane prayasa udapasha. Brahma says you should give up the endeavor. Prayasa means like endeavor. Gyan prayas, the endeavor to understand the absolute by the ascension method. Ascension means, ascending method means I'm going to start from my small position, and from that position try to understand the great reality. As everyone is into that today. And they will speculate universe is this, universe is that, God is this, God is that. It's called Gyan Prayas. There's a Gyan Prayas very popular in the material world because the jivas have big ahankar, big false ego. They basically think they are God. They won't articulate it like that, but the way we act, we think like this basically. So we think we can figure everything out. Even though we are so small, we think we'll understand the great cosmos and everything that's going on. It's called Gyan Prayas. So Gyan Prayasa Mudapasha, giving up Gyan Prayas. Better strategy for understanding the absolute is Namanta Eva. Namanta Eva means like to bow down, bow your head, take humble position. If you want to transfer water from one cup to another, then one cup has to go a little lower. Then you can transfer the water. There is no other method for transferring the water. You cannot, take the glasses at equal position and then throw the water into the air and then try to catch it. Oh, foolishness. Did not work. One cup becomes low and then you easily transfer the water to the other cup. So if you want to understand the absolute, give up this Gyan Prayasa method. Namanta Eva, go low. Bow your head low. Sammukaritam Bhavadiya Vartam. To the glories of Bhagavan spoken by great devotees. Jivanti, make this your life. Just like you eat the food in order to live. So you should eat the Harikatha in order to live in spiritual life. You understand? Most devotees, they don't hear Harikatha anymore. They hear podcasts on TED Talks and YouTube channel. They don't hear Harikatha anymore. Then they say, I'm not feeling inspired in bhakti. That's because you were a starving fellow. How can you, if you don't eat Harikatha, how you will live as a bhakta? That is not possible. Jivanti Sammukaritam Bhavadiya Pratam. The devotees, they live by hearing this Harikatha. Stane Sita. You can stay in whatever position you're in, no problem. Socially, practically, circumstantially. But Shruti-katam Tanuvama Nobi. You should dedicate your body, your mind, your words to this Harikatha. And although Bhagavan is normally unconquerable, ajita, which means you'll not be able to understand him by your intelligence, he becomes conquered by those who take this method. That means by hearing Bhagavan and nourishing your bhakti, you develop praying, and then he just reveals to you that whole reality and the quantum of your own consciousness. This is a good method. Why I quote this verse? Because it says here, the Paramam Punyam, if you hear Hari's glories sung by great devotees, then they bestow supreme auspiciousness, praying. Another nice verse in this regard, Satam Prasangam Amavirya Samvito Bhavanti Harikarna Rasa Ayana Kata Tajoshana Ashrapo Varga Vartvani Shraddha Rati Bhakti. A very famous verse. There should be Satam Prasangam, Sadhu Sangha, intimate association with devotees. Amavirya Samvito, they are doing Harikatha. And if you hear from these great devotees, this Harikatha, then it says, it acts as a rasayana. A rasayana in Ayurveda means they put like certain medicines together. You have some disease, they put certain medicines together, it becomes like a tonic. And then you take that tonic and it removes the disease. So there's a disease in the heart, and a disease in the ear. Vedrogam. The disease in the heart is called the lust, basically, according to Srimad Bhagavatam. A lust for matter is the disease in the heart. And the disease in the ear is that we want to hear all things that will help us fulfill our lusty desires. This is the disease in the ear and disease in the heart. Everyone's got it. Everyone's got disease. And what is the evidence? 2022. Look how humanity is so ghetto, so out of control. Why? Because disease in the heart and disease in the ear. And very hard to remove that disease. But it can be removed if you take a tonic, a rasayana. This tonic, if you take this tonic, the disease in the heart, ear can be removed. So what is that tonic? That tonic is Harikatha. Satam Prasangama Virya Samvita. So Sri Vishnath, when commenting on this verse, he says, if you do ordinary sadhu sangha, he said there will only be bhajan kriya, but there will not be any anarchana vritti. This is a little discouraging, to be honest. But in any case, he says this thing. If you do ordinary association with devotees who aren't, so advanced, so apologies ahead of time. I'm just telling it honestly here. But if you do ordinary sadhu sangha, he says there will only be bhajan kriya. That means there will be the practices of bhakti, but there will not be any anarchana vritti. That means the disease in the heart not going away so fast. So you hear a lot of devotees complaining about that. If you hang around for a little bit, you'll see devotees all the time complaining. I'm just not feeling inspired. I don't know if it's working, blah, blah, blah. They go on like this. Oh, it's okay. It may be because quality of sadhu sangha. He says, but if you do association with great devotees, then immediately there will be taste from the Harikatha, because they speak with a lot of taste. And from that, there will be a national vritti. All the disease in the heart will go away, and the disease in the ear that will also go away. That is Sri Vishwanath's commentary to this verse, Atam Prasang Dhamma Virasambhi. That's a little discouraging, honestly, but he makes this comment. So I'm commenting that here because it says, Giyate Paramam Punya Rishibe Naradadivi. When these topics are sung by great devotees, then those topics sung by the great devotees bestow auspiciousness, supreme auspiciousness, Paramam Punya. That means basically it gives prem bhakti. So this verse is extremely important to the conclusions that are going to be reached in this chapter, because here this verse is introducing the story of Prahlad Maharaj basically, and it's saying that the purpose of the story is to expand bhakti. So that point itself means that there can be no matter in the topics, no hypocrisy in the topics, such as the partiality of the Lord, which would be materially motivated. And the concluding statement also is going to say that by hearing these topics, you become liberated and you can attain the abode of Vishnu. So that is also not possible if there's any hypocrisy in the topics. Pakriti stani karshati. If there's any hypocrisy in the topics, you'll be tied to pakriti only, right? Pakriti stani means standing in pakriti. Karshati, drawn towards that. If there are any hypocrisy in the topic, you'll be in pakriti only. You understand? Just like when you hear the TED Talk, they're full of hypocrisy, so you get attracted to hypocrisy. You understand? When you hear the podcast, then you get attracted to that. You hear the news, you get attracted to that. You'll be in hypocrisy only. You can't get out. But if you are hearing true spiritual knowledge and no hypocrisy in that, then you'll get the goal of life. Praying, you'll get the abode of the Supreme Lord. So this is established by this particular verse. This is the implication of it, at least. Natva Krishna Yamunaye Kati Yeshe Harim Kata. Offering his obeisances to Vyasadeva, Shukadeva Goswami says, now let me speak this Harikatha. So now he begins the answer in 716. So we'll do this verse also, and then we'll pause for the day. So here he says, important verse. All these verses are kind of important. It's taken me a long time to study these things these days. Nirguna pihajo vyakto bhagavan patvite para swamaya gunamavishya bhadya bhadakatam gata. I'll read Prabhupada's translation here. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, is always transcendental to material qualities, and therefore he is called Nirguna, or without qualities, because he is unborn. He does not have a material body to be subjected to attachment and hatred. Okay, this is a translation of the first line of the verse. Nirguna api hi ajo avyakta bhagavan pakrite para. So it says here, Bhagavan, that is the word for God. He is pakriti para. He is transcendental to pakriti. He transcends nature. Nirguna api. Therefore, he is nirguna. Nirguna means without material qualities. There is no sattva, rajas, tamas in him, like it is in us. Sattva, rajas, and tamas. So we're getting pulled this way, that way, the other way. Right? Because of sattva, rajas, tamas. You know this verse, one of the verses that irritated me when I first joined the movement. Yasyasti bhakti bhagavata kinchana sarvaguna tatra samasitesu. The verse says, if you have a kinchan bhakti, if you have pure bhakti for Krishna, then you have all the good qualities of the devas and of God. But if you're not a bhakta, harava bhakta shakuto mahaguna, where are your good qualities? So I used to not like this verse because devotees would say, devotees have all the good qualities, and if you're not a devotee, you have no good qualities. That's how they would speak this verse. But when you live with devotees, you're like, well, y'all don't have all the good qualities. I mean, I got like a few of them, but y'all got some bad qualities too. And I know some non-devotees that have good qualities. So then the Bhagavatam clarifies stuff. It says, if you are not a bhakta of the pure level, Shuddha bhakta, and it said, where are your good qualities? You're simply being pulled by the chariot of the mind. So when you're in Sattva Guna, mode of goodness, you do good things, virtuous things. But when you're in Rajas and Tamas, passion and ignorance mode of nature, you do some crazy stuff. All of us do that. So we get pulled by Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, and so many directions. But because Bhagavan is beyond Prakriti, he is nirguna. There are no sattva, rajas, and tamas in him. So all his activities are not informed by the forces of nature like our activities. He is also ajaha. Ajaha means he is unborn. Unborn means there's not a point in the history of being, existence, that he came into being and comes out of being. Like our bodies come into being for some time and then go out of being. No, Krishna is ajaha, he is unborn. That means he is nitya siddha. His body is always manifest eternally, not coming into being, out of being. And therefore he is avyakta. So avyakta here means, the word avyakta means unmanifest. The import here of our acharyas is that it is self-manifest. Self-manifest means not manifested by some other energy or some other force, or revealed by some other energy or other force. Sometimes an image for self-manifest is the sun, right? Usually if you want to see an object in this world, you have to shine some light on it. And then you can see the object, right? Unless you shine some light on the object, you cannot see the object. Like this bottle here, and I'm holding this just nearby. It is not self-luminous. And therefore I need some light outside of this bottle in order to reveal it, right? Because it is not a self-luminous object. But the sun is a self-luminous object in this world. This is an example. There are no light outside of the sun that can reveal the sun. That sun has its own quality of light. And by that own quality of light, we can see the sun. That is called self-luminous or self-manifest. The story is there of the king. One king, he wanted to see the sun at nighttime. He wanted to see the sun in the nighttime. So he has some ministers. He said, hey, I want to see the sun at night. So the ministers, they made an arrangement for the king to see the sun at night. First two ministers, they were very foolish. So one minister, he, put, excuse me, the candle lights all over the city. So it must have looked very pretty, but you cannot see the sun at night like that. Another minister, he was expert in the science. So he made some big lights and, shone the lights in the sky. Also, the sun did not see the sun at night. So finally, the third minister just told the king, you have some very foolish ministers. And you yourself are also, no one can see the sun at night. Only when the sun rises in the daytime, then by the sun's own quality of sunshine, then our eyes are illumined by that sunshine, then we can see the sun. Otherwise, we cannot see it. This is an example of a self-manifest object here in the material world. So Bhagavan is avyakta here is taken to be self-manifest. There's no, even the light of consciousness, our tiny little light of consciousness, that cannot reveal Bhagavan. And there's no light in the material world that can reveal him. So therefore, again, this is also support the idea that being beyond nature, being self-manifest, there is no matter in him. And therefore he cannot be informed by, we cannot be partial, as partiality is due to the material forces. Plus being self-manifest is another thing, is that we cannot understand the intrinsic nature of Bhagavan unless his own light reveals that nature to us. That is the other sense here. Okay, having described that, the next line says this. I'm reading from Prabhupada's purport. Although the Lord is always above material existence, so nirguna api, so although this is true about his nature, through his spiritual potency, he appeared and acted like an ordinary human being, accepting duties and obligations apparently like a conditioned soul. So the meaning here is swamaya gunam avisha. He enters the quality of his own maya. Swamaya gunam avisha means to enter. Guna means quality. So it can mean the gunas of material nature, sattva, rajas, and tamas, or it can just mean the quality of the spiritual realm. He enters the quality of his own maya. Swamaya means his own maya. So the way Prabhupada's translation and our charts are taken is that Avisha means he's taking support of the quality of his own energy, known as the Swarup Shakti, Antaranga Shakti, Chit Shakti, the internal energy. For these new guys here, you know, Bhagavan has three primary energies: the external energy called Maya, by which he manifests the material world; the marginal energy called the Jiva, by which the souls are existing; and then his internal energy, the energy that manifests, that makes up the spiritual reality. So Swamaya Gunamavisha means he takes support of the quality of his own internal energy. And by that quality, Padya Padakatam Kata, he becomes sometimes oppressed and sometimes oppressor by that own quality. So what is the meaning here? So Jiva Goswami given an important meaning here that's consistent with the indication of the previous verse. So Maya Gunam Avisha means he takes support of the quality of his internal energy. What is that quality? That quality is known as kripa. By his own mercy, which is part of that spiritual energy, he becomes sometimes oppressed and sometimes oppressor. For example, give an example. And Krishna's Damodar Leela, right? Damodar Leela, he was oppressed by his mother, right? She chastises him, she ties him to a grinding motar. He is unable to escape. So that is an example of him becoming oppressed. Or another example of him becoming oppressed later on in his Dwarka Leela. You know, when he's fighting with Kalayavanasura, you know, Kalayavanasura, one demon was there. He had attacked Mathura at the same time that, who was that? Jarasandha was attacking. So the Lord needed to make some tricks to get out of this dangerous situation. So he led Kalayavanasura out of Mathura. He began running. So actually he wasn't running, he was walking casually. And Kalayavanasura was running at full speed. But somehow or other, Krishna was just outside the reach of Kalayavanasura. But as a Kshatriya, Krishna should not be running away from battle. So at this time, it looks like Krishna is being defeated by a demon. Why are he running away like a coward from this warrior? Or Jarasandha, he appears to be defeated by Jarasandha, so he has to leave Mathura and set up shop in Dwarka in order to protect the residents. So is he defeated? So in this way, he looks to be defeated by the asuras. And sometimes, of course, Badakata, he becomes the victor and he wins over the asuras. So what is the meaning of all of this? So Swamaya Gunamavisha, taking support of his own internal energy, the quality of his own internal energy known as kripa, compassion. He sometimes becomes oppressed and sometimes becomes oppressor. So the meaning comes like this according to Jiva Goswami. When the Lord is transcendental, that was the first line. But when he appears in this material world, before the senses of the living entities, he appears to take on positions that resemble our own position. So sometimes he appears to be defeated, sometimes he appears to be the victor. But actually, this is all the play of his internal energy. It is all the play of Leela. Jiva Goswami goes on to say, actually, the true fact of the matter is that the Devatas and the Asuras, they're completely insignificant living entities. They cannot stand before God. So therefore, God does not need the support of Devatas in order to fight his battles. Nor can the demons stand before him. They're completely insignificant. But as a result of their insignificance, the Leela will not be very attractive and it will not move the hearts of the devotees. So what the Lord does when he appears in this manifest world is that he endows the Devatas and the Asuras with his own quality, his own power of internal energy, a tiny portion of it by which they can participate in his Leela. Otherwise, they would not be able to keep pace. It's just, I can't think of a good example of this. It's just like if you were running against, what was his name? Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt was like fastest man on earth, right? I actually haven't watched track and field. I used to be a track athlete. But suppose you were running against Usain Bolt, you would not be able to run against this fellow. He runs 100 meters in like 9.5 seconds or something. It probably takes us like 12 or 13 seconds to run 100 meters if we were running at full speed. So you would not be able to keep up with him. That will not be very fun. But you watch a race where someone is just dusting everyone like that, it's not very interesting to watch after some time. There's no competition in that. So in order, suppose Usain Bolt has some power, some shakti, In order to make the race very interesting, he can endow you with some of his speed. And that way you can compete with him. And that way make it a little bit interesting. Then it becomes very attractive for those who like track and field. It becomes very interesting. So the similar way when Bhagavan appears in this world, he endows both the Devatas and the Asuras with his own energy by which they can participate in this Leela. This also protects his impartiality because everyone's getting the benefit of his sort of Shakti in order to participate in this Leela. So there, Jiva Goswami gives me some explanation like this. He says the word Maya, which also means deceit, like the energy that deludes the jivas, that is also another meaning of the word Maya. He says if we take the word Maya to be that, it will be inconsistent with the indications of the first verse of this chapter, introducing the story, and the conclusion. That would be inconsistent. And also be inconsistent with the theology because Maya cannot stand before God. There's this verse there that comes in the second canto, chapter 5. Vilajamanaya yasya stamtum ikshapate amuya. You know this verse. That Maya feels ashamed to stand before the Lord because of her seva, deluding the jiva. She feels ashamed to stand before the Lord. But she doesn't feel ashamed to stand before us. She's right in front of our eyes. And as a result of that, we are bewildered by her, we speak all nonsense. That's what the verse says. Our intelligence is bewildered by her, we speak all nonsense. So Maya cannot stand before God, and therefore Swamaya Gunam Avisha cannot be taken as Prakriti in this context, because Maya cannot stand before the opulence of God. So therefore Maya means his own internal energy. He appears in this world by that internal energy, and by that same internal energy, he's investing both the Devas and the Asuras with that quality in order for the Leela to play out. And so sometimes the demons defeat Bhagavan, not by their own power, but by the power of that internal energy that they've been infused with. They defeat him for the play of the Leela. And sometimes the Lord is defeating them. And that way the Leela becomes very relishable for the Bhaktas, for whom the Leela is itself manifest for. And this is, we'll come back to this because this is going to be the thread that ties all this theology together. That everything Bhagavan does is for the pleasure of his devotees. It is not because of any consideration, like I don't like the demons, I like the devatas. They're insignificant. They don't care about that. It's all for the play of his devotees. And so his internal energy is being distributed to all the players so that they can participate in the Leela, and that Leela is for the pleasure of his devotees like Prahlad Maharaj. So I think I capture all the points. I try to get all the points. Let me see my notebook. I got everything here. We're gonna pause there. I think this is all the points that at least I can recall. Oops. And look at private enough. So let's see if there's anything in the chat box here. What's the reference for this point? Okay, so that I already answered, right? The 325 Bhagavatam, that is the verse of Tam Prasangam Amavir Samvido. And Sri Vishwanath's commentary, he makes that point that we brought up. That only if you do prasangam, like the association with the advanced devotees, then the Leelas become relishable. And then they become rasayada with the disease in the heart. So this point about the Lord infusing both the demons and devatas with his energy reminds one of the 11th canto verse where Krishna says he is the force behind the atheist arguments. I don't remember that verse precisely. It's probably slightly different because the atheist arguments are mostly due to Maya Shakti.
What do you remember? I can't remember the exact wording either, but the verse says something like, you bewilder the non-devotees to constantly argue about your, and then therefore they remain in confusion.
Yeah, so that verse, we quoted just yesterday, I think also, 6:431. That comes in the Hamsa prayers. But the verse opens up with Taksh Chaktayo. Takshayo Samvada Vivada. Okay, I forget the verse again. That Shakti in that verse is the Maya Shakti. So it says by that Maya Shakti, he causes the theorists to forget their own soul and then argue and counter-argue, sometimes agreeing, sometimes disagreeing. And in this way, he makes a situation where they cannot come to any conclusion. They just remain bewildered by argumentation. Without Shakti, there is Maya Shakti. But the Shakti by which the demons and the Devatas can participate in the Leela, that is Swarup Shakti. Otherwise, they cannot compete. Try to understand my Usain Bolt example. It's maybe not best example. Maybe no one here likes track and field. But this is a very pertinent example. Suppose you like track and field. So you are a bhakta of track and field, a track and field bhakta. And you want to relish the race as a track and field bhakta. But if Usain Bolt is 5 seconds faster than everyone, there's no relishment in that. You understand? There's no relishment in that. Only when there's someone who's right on Usain's Bolt behind, and he's about to lose, then you relish it. Oh, what a wonderful thing. He barely survived it, but he did survive. Then it becomes relishable, you understand? But if he's 5 seconds ahead of everyone, there's no relishment in that. You'll start going on your phone and watching some movie. What is the point of watching this, right? It's so boring. You understand? So Usain Bolt, if he have powers like Bhagavan, he says, okay, I'm gonna make this a little bit fun. So I'm gonna fuse you out with some of my own speed. And that way you can keep pace and make this a little exciting. You understand? So same way, Krishna wants the bhaktas to relish the Leela. So in order for them to relish it, he has to infuse the devas and the asuras with his own power, by which they can participate in the Leela. And it becomes exciting. Then all the bhaktas can relish that Leela. They experience all the Vyabhichari bhavas, Sanchara, excitement, wonder, all that comes. But not if Krishna just, it's like, for example, when we hear Varaha, I always think of Varaha's Leela. When we hear Varahade's Leela, he literally just touches Hiranyaksha on the back of the ear, and then Hiranyaksha just eyes explode from his head and he just dies. And I'm just like, wow, that was like really anticlimactic. But he's fighting with Hiranyakashipu here in this canto. It's very exciting. Nrsimha comes out, he grabs Hiranyakashipu, but then Hiranyakashipu slips out, and all the devotees are like, oh, they become frightened. And devotees who are relishing this Leela, they become excited to sing the stories because of that. But it would not be exciting if the devatas and asuras couldn't even keep pace with the Leela. So therefore, Krishna has to infuse them with his own internal energy. That way they can participate, and it becomes so that because everyone is being infused with the internal energy, he is not partial. So this is also protecting his impartiality, because everyone is being infused with his power in order to participate in the pastime. So even though Krishna is killing the demons, sometimes he's also being defeated by them. But that is all but they're all being supported by the same energy that makes that whole Leela possible. So again, keep in mind, this explanation is following the line Harish Charitam Adbhutam, which was from verse 4, that the exploits of Hari cannot be deliberated upon. So it has to only be revealed by sacred text by Bhagavan himself. No one will ever come up with an explanation like this. By looking at Krishna Leela, you will only do aropita. For Prabhupada's purport, he says aropita. You will look at your own position and superimpose, and then come to some wrong conclusion and reject God. So by aropita, by thinking, you cannot give an explanation like this. Oh, that the demons are also getting some internal energy, the devatas also, and that way they can operate. You'll not get any explanation like that. So this sort of is like a secret explanation that has to be given because it can't be deliberated upon any other way by our own intelligence. So this is keeping the continuity of all the concepts that are being understood. So it's a little interesting. It gets more interesting. We might have to take one verse at a time, but some of the stuff in here is a little bit crazy. I got a direct message. I certainly understand not having any competition. But Kunda, I want a rematch. You talking so much smack, huh? That was years ago. I didn't have proper shoes. I got a best time. For those of you who know, Mukunda, we all had this retreat and we did a race. And there's video evidence of this race. So you can see I had a horrible start. Mukunda took off flying. And then I passed everyone, but I couldn't catch Mukunda. He was too far. So he's talking all that smack from years ago. Let's do one again. Now I'm super fit now, bro. I also, that time, I wasn't even into fitness that time. Now I do. I'm fitness. I bet you I could really harm you. I'll humble you profoundly, my man. Mukunda is remembering this because of my saying both Udipan. He's been stimulated to give this competition thing. And JJP has a very nice collective. You're on your way to adapt. Bro, I look the same since high school. I honestly, when I see so many of my friends now hitting 40s, basically, I'm like, man, y'all letting it go a little bit. But I keep it together. Okay, we got some question here. Siddha Haridas, or maybe one of the guys there.
Hi, my name is Joey.
Joey, what's up?
I have a question. You said there about him entering the quality of his own Maya. There was a phrase for that. It began with Swamaya, but I didn't catch the rest.
If you see the verse, you have the Bhagavatam in front of you?
No, I don't.
Yeah, you guys, you can go pick up, the library is there on the wall. So they have 7th canto there. You can keep it next to you. We try to explain the words and the verses. So the verse is Swamaya Gunam. So the word Guna means quality. So Swamaya means, Swa means one's own. And Maya means, Maya can have many meanings, but it means God's own Maya, the quality of God's own Maya. So Gunam can, without qualifying it, the word Gunam can mean, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. So that's how many people will take it. So Maya Guna means the gunas of nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance. But here, from the explanation we heard today, the word gunam here means compassion, God's quality of compassion. That's how our commentators are taking it. He takes support of the quality, gunam, of his own internal energy, swamaya. So what is that quality of his own internal energy? That quality is known as kripa, or compassion. So by his compassion, sometimes he is becoming defeated by the asuras or by his own mother, for example. I gave those 2 examples. And by his own compassion, he defeats his devotees, or in love, for example, or he defeats the asuras by his own compassion. And that way, everyone is getting the experience of his own quality of compassion by allowing them to participate in these leelas, which are all of the internal energy. And even if they're not from the internal energy, they can be infused with the internal energy so that they can keep pace with the leela that he must unfold. So the word gunam there is taken as compassion from our commentators.
Is the internal energy equal to kripa, leela, and various other synonyms?
Yes. You have to, of course, sometimes you have to see how the words are being used. But yeah, the word kripa just means mercy. So sometimes you can hear the word kripa being spoken about like someone in the material world has mercy or compassion. So that kripa is not the internal energy. But the mercy of God is the internal energy. Any quality of God is the internal energy manifests. So his mercy, his steadiness, his joking nature, all of that is the internal energy when in reference to God. So Leela is his activities. So that is also the internal energy when in reference to God. You also do actions, but that is not called Leela. That is called karma. And that is not the internal energy. That is the material energy.
And kripa is spelled Kripa.
You can spell it like that. Yeah, you can spell it like that, like phonetically. That is okay.
Prabhu, I have also a question. I was wondering that we always hear that in the Dwarka Leela, the so many residents of Dwarka, they're actually demigods who are coming to participate in Lord Krishna's Leela, and then when at the end that most of the Leela happens, they go back. It's kind of confusing to me that some of them went back to being a demigod, some of them went back to spiritual world. And then you today were mentioning that, that demigods are empowered by internal energy of the Lord to participate in those leelas. So are you saying there are two types of associates of Lord which participate in leela? One who are empowered by him to
Yes.
participate, and others are just real associates of the Lord, which are not.
Yes, correct.
We don't need any kind of
Correct.
empowerment. They already have internal energy. Okay.
They're already internal energy, so they don't need to be empowered as such. But then others are devatas or asuras that need to be empowered by their energy. Otherwise, they cannot stand before it. Darkness cannot stand before light. So Maya is darkness, internal energy is light. So the internal energy has to sort of infuse the darkness, if you will, of the object with its own quality. Just like putting the iron rod in fire. Then the iron rod takes up the quality of fire, and then it also becomes hot to some degree. And can burn. So examples like this. Ananta Vallabh is still there. You want to say something? I think I saw you said comment here. Also, let me look at this chat box. JJP, you don't look 38. Thank you. And I don't move like I'm 38 either, Mukunda. When we're together, we're gonna race, homie. Oh, I got your private message. That's some disrespect. Okay, great. Higher in chat box. Okay. Athena says, have some questions from previous class. Also, maybe no hard delineation, but in general, how do we identify or differentiate a great sadhu, i.e. a Narcana Vritti? Honestly, you don't. But you might, and you know, I don't know how else to say it other than to say that when we're in the presence of great devotees, they're able to infuse their own taste for divinity in us. Like Prabhupada writes about this in First Canto, Chapter 5, verse number, 24, 25, where he says, devotional service is as infectious in a good way as infectious diseases. And then he goes on to say that we are infected with the ruchi of the devotee. So in the presence of great souls, when they speak Harikatha, they have so much ruchi for it that when you hear it from them, you also get ruchi for that katha. Actually, you don't have any ruchi, but suddenly you want to hear. I saw this practically when I was in Braj. I was going to some class. I think Harisham was going with me also this time. We were going to one of Babaji's classes on Priti Sandarbha. So there was this one scholar, she was a lady, she was doing some research on like rasa. And she was trying to compare the rasa of Hindu culture to some, Middle Eastern tradition stuff anyway. So she came in the beginning of the class, she was just like a scholar, just doing research. And he would do 1 hour Priti Sandarbha reading every evening. Then, so first evening, she would just ask questions. She was like very neutral. But then after 1 week, because we were hearing so much about, rasa and rasa lila, and after 1 week, the hour would go by very fast because it was very interesting subject matter. It was explained very nicely. And then the 1 hour would get over, she would be disturbed. She was like, oh, wait, it's already an hour. Can we go on just another half hour? She would always start asking like this, can we go half hour? And I remember observing that and thinking, oh, how nice. When some devotee has some sort of ruchis there. Not necessarily ruchi bhakti, I'm saying, but they have some genuine taste for the subject matter. Then you associate with them, and the taste comes. Then when you get taste for the subject, then anartha vritti happens. You give up other things because you want to do this thing instead. So you can maybe get a sense by looking at how the ruchi is coming. And I don't mean ruchi bhakti, but I just mean like a very sincere, intense interest for the subject matter, that other things become insignificant for you. Okay, you said there was some other question there.
Thank you. I am mindful of time, so I can hold my questions to another session if you like.
Okay, I can do tomorrow. If anyone else wants to say anything. So what happened with this lady? I don't know, but I remember I left Braja like maybe a week after that. When I was leaving, I saw her learning how to chant japa, and so I didn't keep up with her obviously, but I saw she was becoming genuinely interested. Started taking up a little bit of a japa practice, and that's how it works when you get a little taste for the subject matter. Mukunda, I worried about permanently ruining your reputation if I get you again. I'll do as you desire, though. We're gonna prove who has a dad bod, bro. As the actual father, you're getting the dad bod.
Prabhu, as the men's meeting is coming up, that's where we can have it.
Yes, we will have it. We'll
So-
get everyone else to participate, but it will be primarily between Mukunda and I.
So let's
It's
get
practical.
let's start the training from now onwards.
Can you please film it? You guys are all right. Anything related to the class? So much smack talking today. All right, okay. So we'll pause there for today then. Hope the subject matter is understood. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Go Purnani Hari Hari Bo. Hare Krishna. Hare